In the chaos of Nigeria's bloody civil war, as leaders fell, bombs dropped, and hope bunched low, one man stepped forward, not with weapons, but with wisdom. His name, Major General Philip Effiong. He was the man who surrendered Biafra to Nigeria. More than that, he was the man who chose peace when it mattered most. The war had raged on for 30 bloody months. Philip Effiong fought in the war. He was not told about the war. He witnessed it. He took active part. He saw the worst form of human deprivation. He saw how children died of kwashiorkor and how men and women were fallen by bullets, hunger, and aerial bombardments. All was not well, and there was the need to find a truce and end the vicious circle. It was Philip Effiong, as officer administering the Republic of Biafra, in the absence of his boss Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, that took the bold initiative to end the war. This is the forgotten account of the man who stood alone in the most fragile moment of Nigeria's history. This is not just a war chronicle. It is a story of courage and the profound cost of choosing what was expedient at the time. Long before he became the man who would officially end one of Africa's bloodiest wars, Philip Effiong was just a boy with big dreams. Born on November 18, 1925 in Ibionibom, in present-day Akwa Ibom State, he grew up in colonial Nigeria, a time when opportunities were scarce, especially for those from the rural backgrounds. Yet, Philip Effiong pursued his education with determination. He trained as a mechanical engineer in Zaria, and his desire to serve and lead brought him into the colonial army in the 1950s, one of the few Nigerians at the time to earn a commission. As the country moved towards independence, Philip Effiong climbed the military ladder quickly, proving himself capable, honest, and loyal. By the early 1960s, he was already one of the highest-ranking officers from the eastern part of Nigeria. He trained abroad in the United Kingdom, served in the United Nations peacekeeping force in the Congo, and earned the respect of colleagues across the regional lines. Nigeria, however, was a boiling pot. Things were getting tense between ethnic groups. The military, once neutral, began to split along tribal lines. When the 1966 coup and its bloody counter-coup shattered national unity, Philip Effiong, like many other Eastern officers, found himself caught between loyalty to Nigeria and the urgent need to protect his people. He did not know it yet, but he was marching towards history, not as a soldier with guns, but as the man who would one day call on his compatriots to lay down arms in the name of peace. When the crisis in Nigeria exploded in 1967, Philip Effiong was not only a soldier, but a man standing at the center of a nation about to break apart. Following the massacre of an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 Easterners, predominantly Igbos, in the northern region, and the rising ethnic tensions across the country, Lieutenant Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu, the military governor of the eastern region, declared the region's secession from Nigeria. He called it the Republic of Biafra. Effiong, loyal to his region and to his people, stood by Ojukwu. He was appointed Chief of General Staff of the Biafran Armed Forces, essentially the second most powerful man in Biafra. The war officially began in July 1967, and it quickly became clear that it was not going to be a quick fight. The Nigerian Federal Forces attacked Biafra from all sides. What followed was a brutal, bloody war that lasted nearly 3 years and claimed between 3 million lives. Many of them civilians, especially children, due to famine and diseases. Philip Effiong was not a typical war general. While Ojukwu was fiery, passionate, and known for powerful speeches, Effiong was calm, thoughtful, and focused on military operations. He wasn't a politician in uniform, but a professional soldier with his primary focus on survival and defense. He led battles, strategized defenses, and watched as his homeland burnt. Biafra was surrounded and blockaded. Its people were starving, and international help barely trickled in. Yet, Philip Effiong and other commanders held the line. But as time passed, the dream of Biafra began to fade. The odds were against Biafra. At a point in the war, fewer weapons, fewer soldiers, and no international recognition except a handful of sympathetic nations around Africa and Haiti in the Caribbean. By the late 1969, Nigeria's federal forces were closing in so much on Biafra. Biafra began losing territory faster, and the humanitarian disaster wasn't. Still, Effiong kept fighting, not just on the battlefield, but behind the scenes too, urging leaders to find a path to peace, even while carrying out his duties as a soldier. He knew what was coming. He just did not know when it would be his turn to carry the heaviest weight of all. And that moment was near. By early January 1970, Biafra was on its last legs. The once bold push for secession had been crushed by the sheer weight of hunger, relentless air raids, military blockades, and political isolation. Within the chaos, one man still tried to hold the collapsing house together, and that man was Major General Philip Effiong. In the dead of the night on January 9th, 1970, Ojukwu, the very first of Biafra, quietly left the country, boarding a plane to Côte d'Ivoire, now on Ivory Coast, to seek what he called political asylum. He chose to leave Biafra in the hands of Philip Effiong by appointing him the administrator of the Republic of Biafra. Philip was his most trusted military commander at this point in time. Secondly, Effiong was no longer just a general. He was the acting head of state of Biafra. It was a heavy crown to wear, but he had no option than to accept the responsibility and wear the crown with equanimity. By the time he assumed leadership, Biafra was already a shadow of itself. Most of the territory had been recaptured by Nigerian forces. Civilians were starving, soldiers exhausted, and medical supplies dried up. There were no more cards left to play. Effiong knew the truth that many around him refused to say aloud. The truth was that the war was over and there was no need pretending about it. Prolonging the war would simply mean more death in Biafra. Philip Effiong chose the path of peace. He believed the cost of pride was too high when children were dying in the streets. Just days after taking power on January 12, 1970, Effiong made the most difficult decision. In a national broadcast on Radio Biafra at Obodo Ukwu, he announced the surrender of Biafra with immediate effect and called on federal forces to cease all hostilities against the people of Biafra and to come forward for an armistice. He took nothing for granted and thus had to consult widely with the remaining leadership of Biafra before making the surrender. The war, which had cost over 3 million lives, was finally over. Effiong's actions weren't just about waving the white flag. He sought to end the suffering and protect the lives that remained. Along with the remaining leadership of Biafra, Philip Effiong departed Biafra to Lagos by air to meet General Yakubu Gowon, the Nigerian head of state, and formally surrender Biafra. The meeting was tense but historic. Many feared reprisals, executions, or military tribunals, but Gowon, true to his earlier promise of no victor, no vanquished, granted Effiong and other Biafran leaders a general amnesty. Still, for Effiong, the pain of surrender never left him. He later wrote, quote, "The price we paid for peace was high, but I would rather be remembered as the man who stopped the war, not the one who prolonged the suffering." End of quote. He did not flee. He did not make excuses. He stood tall and took responsibility, facing his people, his enemies, and the future all at once. In the history of Nigeria, few men have faced such impossible choices with such quiet strength. Effiong's chapter as Biafra's leader lasted only a few days, but in those few days, he helped end one of Africa's bloodiest civil wars. When Philip Effiong walked away from the ashes of Biafra in January 1970, he did not return to power or wealth. He returned to silence, and a country still unsure how to treat the men who once dared to break it apart. Unlike other military figures who re-emerged into politics or businesses, Effiong chose a quiet life. In fact, for many years it was as though he had vanished. His silence, however, was not shame, it was dignity. He was simply just left alone. He moved with his family to Akwa Ibom State and resumed a life far from the center of power. He lived humbly as a private citizen, a man still carrying the weight of Biafra on his shoulders. Effiong did not try to rebrand himself as a political hero. He never ran for political office. He did not form any movement and refused to exploit his role in Biafra for personal gain. He saw his role in the ending of the war not just as an act of surrender, but of profound responsibility. He had witnessed firsthand the suffering, children dying from kwashiorkor, women walking miles in search of food, and communities shattered by bombs. He believed continuing the war would have been nothing but cruelty. In his later years, he slowly began to receive some recognition, particularly in the southeast and south-south, where the scars of Biafra still ran deep. Events were held in his honor, and younger generations began to see him not just as the man who surrendered Biafra, but as the man who chose peace. In 2003, at the age of 78, Major General Philip Effiong passed away to the great beyond. There were no grand state burials or national memorials, yet in his home local government of Ibom in Akwa Ibom State, and among several Igbo people who survived the war, his death marked the loss of a man who had carried a burden most would not dare to lift. His son Philip Effiong Jr. would later become a professor in the United States of America, keeping the family name alive in intellectual circles and often defending his father's legacy. Effiong had many children from his lovely wife Josephine Effiong, who was an epitome of beauty. The children are Roslyn Effiong, Mercy Ugot Effiong, Valentine Effiong, Charles Effiong, a lawyer by profession, Philip Effiong Jr., Francis Effiong, Philippa Ume, and Elizabeth Edem. Today, history is starting to remember Effiong more kindly. While others saw defeat, he saw humanity. While others vanished or blamed, he faced the consequences with grace. In a continent where leaders often rule with ego and vengeance, Effiong's humility stands out like a lighthouse in the dark. His story may not be loud, but it is lasting. Philip Effiong did not leave behind wealth or monuments. He left behind a decision, one that served millions of lives. He was never decorated like most others, but maybe that's what made him different. He did not fight for fame. He fought for an ending. Sometimes the most powerful leaders are the ones willing to walk away from the fight. Thanks for watching this edition of Back in History, and do remember to subscribe to the channel or follow the page for regular notification on every new video. I am your friend and host Ekemi Nudim, wishing you the best of time in all you do.